The president weighed in early this morning with this tweet. The race for DNC chairman was, of course, totally rigged. Bernie's guy, like Bernie himself, never had a chance. Clinton demanded Perez. Joining me now from New Hampshire, Corey Lewandowski, former campaign manager for Mr. Trump, still sometimes an advisor, and now a political consultant. And Corey, welcome back to Fox News Sunday.
Thank you for having me.
First, I want to get your thoughts about the election of Tom Perez, a relative centrist, as chair of the DNC. What does it say to you about how Democrats are going to deal with President Trump?
You know, Chris, what this says to me is that they've now put someone in the chairman of the Democratic Party who doesn't understand what's going on in America. You know, you have an opportunity, they would have had an opportunity to pick a candidate that understood what middle America is about and not someone who's just concerned about the East Coast or the West Coast. And instead what we've seen is, you know, more of the same from the Democratic Party, which is what caused them to lose this election at the presidential level. Tom Perez was a close confidant of Hillary Clinton. And if you look at the three major Democratic presidential candidates, whether it's Michael Dukakis, Mondale, Wallace, the three of them combined could not have secured enough electoral votes to become elected president of the United States. That's what this party now represents, is completely out of touch with mainstream America, understanding that their base is on the right and the far left of the political spectrum in the United States, all the way in California and in Massachusetts. And this is just a terrible decision for these guys because they're continuing to move to the left and forgetting what the real people care about.
I want to, and the reason we invited you on in the first place is I want to talk about the Trump agenda with you, given the fact that he's going to have this primetime speech to Congress. But before we get to that, these last couple of weeks of Mr. Trump's first days in office have been dominated by attacks on the media and the intelligence community. And here is Chief Strategist Steve Bannon at the CPAC conference this week.
They're corporatist, globalist media that are adamantly opposed to an economic nationalist agenda like Donald Trump has.
There certainly were a lot of ists there, corporatist and globalist and nationalist, but you have said that you think that this president needs to have a kind of laser focus on his economic agenda. Do all of these attacks on the media and intelligence and opponents, does that get in the way of that message?
Chris, what the problem is that the media continues to, run a false narrative about this president. And if they would just cover him fairly, and what the president said at his press conference, where he spent 77 minutes fielding questions from the media, is, look, I'll take bad stories, but just report fairly and accurately on what we're doing. And they've refused to do that time and time again. We've seen front page stories in the Washington Post, in the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, which are just 100% factually inaccurate. And the response is, oops, we made a mistake, or we've updated it, and that the White House has denied these things.
Why not just pursue his agenda? Here's what President Trump tweeted late Friday night. Fake news media knowingly doesn't tell the truth, a great danger to our country. He may be right on that, or he may be wrong on it, Corey, but how many jobs does that create?
Well, Chris, the president is out creating jobs. We see what he's done with Boeing Corporation. We've seen what he's done with Carrier Corporation. We see time and time again he's bringing companies in saying, what can we do to create a better environment for the American business community? He's reducing regulations. He's passed an executive order that says for every new executive order, we're going to reduce 2 executive orders, 2 regulations, so that businesses can grow. That's what the president's doing. He's bringing companies in to say, what can we do to grow? The media doesn't want to report that. The media wants to report false stories of the removal of Martin Luther King Jr.'s bust from the Oval Office, which we know to be factually inaccurate. They want to write a story about a story of national security, which is absolutely factually false, particularly when you have the director of national intelligence or you have the director of the CIA saying that the story that you have written has a false narrative in it, and the media doesn't want to report that. They have their own agenda, and this is the first president in a lifetime that has the ability to fight back through his almost 100 million people who follow him through the various mediums and social media. He has to do this to get the real story out to the American people.
All right, but I want to press my point on this. There's no question that the president has signed a number of executive orders, and we've reported on all of them. But in terms of his legislative agenda, he's falling behind where other new presidents have been at the same point in their terms. And one of the questions I've got, particularly given the fact that he's going to give his speech to Congress this week, how important is it for him, given the fact that there are some splits inside the Republican Party, to give marching orders, to give direction of where he wants to see Republicans in Congress and the House and Senate go in passing his agenda?
Well, it's very important, and I think what this administration has said, and you heard from the Secretary of the Treasury, where they're looking at the first full tax change since 1986, the first fundamental tax change. They're hoping to get that done in the coming months. We know that the President has said during his press conference that he's going to submit a plan for the full repeal and replacement of Obamacare. What we know about Obamacare, Chris, is that premiums are up over 100% in many of these states. Private companies are pulling out. The plans are a failure. The promises that were made to the American people of if you want your doctor, if you like your plan, you can keep it, are not factually correct. His agenda is moving forward through Congress. What he has done in the first 35 or 36 days is the executive orders that didn't require the confirmation process or the approval of Congress. Very important. And if you look, he's put coal miners back to work. They were in the White House last week saying, "Thank you, Mr. President, for giving us the opportunity to get back to work every day." He's meeting with car executives. He's meeting with airline executives. What can the government do to stimulate the economy so that we're not growing at 1%, but we're growing at 4% or 5%? We finally have an OMB director, an Office of Management and Budget, who can finally look at the budget, and as the President puts together his budget, it is his moral belief that the government needs to be leaner and more efficient and more business-friendly. I think that's what you'll see coming out of his budget in the near future.
But Corey, let's take it as a specific example. You mentioned a bunch there: Obamacare, repeal and replace. 11 million people gained health care coverage through the expansion of Medicaid. There are now, as I say, there's a split inside the Republican Party because a lot of congressional Republicans look back home at their states where people gained coverage for the expansion of Medicaid. They don't want to give that up. There are others who say we want to stop the expansion of Medicaid. Does the President need, in his speech on Tuesday, to help settle that issue? Because there's a real split inside the GOP.
Well, I think what the President is going to use during his speech on Tuesday, he's going to talk about a number of things. He's going to talk about the accomplishments of his first month in office and the executive orders that he's outlined. The second thing he's going to talk about, though, is the economic security our country needs. And that's about education. It's about jobs. That's very important. The third thing that I think the President is probably going to talk about is border security, taking care of our veterans, national security. He has talked about this in general, the need to increase spending on the military. But when it comes specifically to Obamacare, Chris, you have to remember, there are multiple states where the premiums for these people are up over 100%. Small businesses can't afford this. Individuals who are on the plan can't afford this anymore.
Corey, I understand the campaign against Obamacare. The question is, what are you going to do to replace it? And that's what a lot of people are concerned about. Let me ask you about another.
But that's what the White House is working on right now with the members of Congress. And what the President said during his press conference is by the second or third week of March, they'll have a plan up on the Hill. The Hill's going to be working on this already to make sure that there is a unified component so that people can actually have health care coverage. The President's been very clear about this. He has a giant heart. What he said was, we're not going to throw people out on the street. We're going to take care of our people. But you have to do it in a manner that doesn't have increases of 100+% so people can't afford to cover themselves anymore.
Let me move on to another subject. The President also plans to roll out a revised travel ban this week that will cut off people, visitors, and refugees coming from certain countries. But a report that was leaked this week by the Department of Homeland Security said this, and let's put it up on the screen. Country of citizenship is unlikely, is unlikely to be a reliable indicator of potential terrorist activity. Two questions. What does the President do about these continued leaks from within his administration? And secondly, you know, when you get something like this from DHS, there's a possibility that it's going to get blocked again, his new travel order. Maybe he should forget about the travel orders and just go to extreme vetting.
Well, let me say the first part, you're absolutely right. And I think, you know, I don't speak for the administration. I speak for Corey Lewandowski, citizen. Any information that's being leaked out of this administration needs to have a lid put on it. And it's very hard to do when you've got career bureaucrats sitting in these government agencies who have access to information that have a completely different agenda. And if the Senate would confirm the President's selections for secretary and then the under positions, we could stop those things. That's very important to do, so hopefully the Senate will take those up and confirm those. The second component of this is, if you listen to what John McCain said, someone who has been quick to criticize the President, he's talked about General Mattis and General Kelly, General McMaster, the entire national security team. He says it's potentially the best national security team that has ever been assembled. And when you look at that holistically, and the advice that they're giving the president as it relates to a travel ban or having a better vetting process, the president is very open, in my opinion, to listening to what those experts say and writing a plan which makes sure, first and foremost, that the American people are safe and secure in their homeland. And if that means an extreme vetting process, if it means rethinking the way the State Department issues visas, then you have to do that. It's crystal clear. The Constitution is crystal clear.
Corey?
The president has the presidential prerogative to stop anybody he wants from coming into the country by suspending visas. There's no question about it.
Corey, I got less than a minute left. I want to ask you one last thing. A top Republican, House Republican Darrell Issa of California came out over the weekend and said that he thinks that there should be a special prosecutor to investigate this question of links between the Trump campaign and Russian intelligence. He says he doesn't think that the Justice Department and Attorney General Sessions should do it because they're too close to President Trump. What do you think of Issa's idea, special prosecutor?
I think with all due respect, Senator Jeff Sessions, now Attorney General Jeff Sessions, has the utmost character and qualifications. If he wants to investigate this under the Department of Justice, that's his prerogative to do so.
And what do you think Issa's up to?
Because I was on the campaign. Well, I don't know, but let me tell you, because I was on the campaign for 18 months, I ran the campaign. Never, ever, ever did I or anyone that I know of have communication or contact with anyone from Russia or the Russian government whatsoever. So, look, I can tell you this. I have the utmost confidence in Attorney General Sessions. If he believes that there is something there, then he will investigate that. I think he's completely capable and competent to do so. He is a man of the utmost integrity, and I would leave it in his capable hands.
Corey, thank you. Thanks for your time today. Always good to talk with you.
My pleasure. Thank you.